Hi everyone, this is Anime Soirée. My name is Griffin. Today we have Will and Kyle, and we will be talking about A Silent Voice. It is a 2016 anime movie. The movie showcases the life of Shoya from sixth grade, and he relentlessly bullies a deaf girl, um, and he faces some pretty dire consequences for that bullying. And the movie kind of shows his progression of the depression and the anxiety he had from the consequences of that bullying as he matured into a teenager, and how he kind of tackled that past and how it affected others around him and his mental state. And he ends up trying to redevelop his relationship with this deaf girl, Shoko. And it's a pretty beautiful story. I do like this movie. It's definitely got that like Kimi no Wa like art style, like super pretty, super like elegant, and it's a love story for sure. Uh, Definitely has some pretty dark themes. It's probably one of the better interpretations I've seen of like bullying and like what that kind of looks like and how brutal kids can be, and like what bullies like I guess grow into, and especially bullies who like face the consequences of their actions and bullies who don't face the consequences of their actions. That was kind of the most interesting part of this movie to me. Was the juxtaposition of Shoya and what was her name? What was her name? Give me a second. The dark.
Joko?
No, no, not
Oh,
her.
oh,
Not
the other girl,
yeah. What's
Ueno.
it? Oh, wait, no. Thank you. Because to me, Shoya kind of was like the very angsty kid who got in a lot of trouble, but then pretty early on he got like set straight, and he kind of felt remorse for his actions. And then Oya was also a bully because they both took part in bullying Shoko. But she didn't have to face any consequences for the bullying, and she kind of just stayed a bad person throughout her life. And I think that dynamic was like the most interesting part of the movie for me, at least. And then obviously the relationship between the two was pretty beautiful. And overall, I liked the movie. I wouldn't say it was like anything groundbreaking, but it's a pretty good love story overall. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I really like this movie. I think it's like what I really like about it, like you were saying, how it's like one of the better portrayals of like bullying and stuff. I really like how basically like the entire movie, like the bullying is kind of just framed like as like a failure to communicate. And then, like, as the movie goes on and, like, when we see Shoya try to, like, make up with Shoko, we see, like, them able to, like, successfully communicate, and that's kind of, like, what ends up healing the divide between them, whereas, like, Ueno is never able to, like, really, like, communicate with either of them really on, like, the level that they're like, she can never really understand either of them. So I mean, yeah, I think it's like yeah, like you said, it's like a really great portrayal of bullying and also just like how people communicate with each other in general. And it's like incredibly well directed. The visuals are amazing, and it like does a really, really great job of conveying the story in like a visually interesting way. And then also, I think that like the the development of like the Shoya and Shoko's relationship is like really, really, really good.
Yeah, I also really like this movie. Like, I'll probably watch it again in the next week or so. Just because I liked it so much. I really liked how it showed, like you guys are talking about, bullying is not something you see portrayed pretty well. I mean, it's portrayed a lot, but it's usually just like a small gag or something on the side. And like to be have it be a focal point of like this of Ishida's like development and like that's like his character and like the fact that he faced repercussions for his bullying by being bullied himself and like how that affected him going into his teenage years, like not being able to look people in their face and like not being able to make friends, other things like that, and just like how it spirals into this anxiety and this depression and just this like complete failure of character is like really interesting, and I thought it was shown extremely well, and like yeah, it was pretty great. And then you also have Joko, who's also dealing with her own things. Like she was the original bully victim, and she has to transfer schools. She still has trouble making friends, and she seems to like find that within her sister as like her best friend, and you get to see that with like her sister being protective of her like very early on, and then later on, like you've got conflict with the mother. Um, but then ultimately, like both these people that have been bullied, and one was a bully at one point, they both end up suicidal, which is like a very scary concept, and like one of them almost dies because of it. It's like a very dark subject matter, and I think it was handled excellently.
You
Yeah, like
said, I just want to say one quick note to that you said Shoka was the original bully victim. And I feel like they were trying to hint that Shoya was the original bully victim, and that when he was growing up in middle school, like when he joined the school or whatever, he was being like bullied by the other boys, and then he started like bullying them back to like retaliate, and then they kind of like accepted him, and then when another new student came, he just did what was done to him, and so he probably thought that that was like okay. So I would say that, it's not even really Shoya's fault. It's like, whatever parent fucked up their kid enough to make them think bullying was okay, who then bullied Shoya, who then bullied Shoko. At least that's what I thought that they were hinting at, because they had some like flashbacks pretty early on in the
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I do remember
I
that.
definitely picked up on that like when I watched it this time as well. I don't think I got that the first time I watched it. But yeah, I mean, what I think is like what I thought was like a really, really great scene was like when like it's not like he was the only bully, right? But he was just like he was like the loudest about it. He was like the most blatant about it and the most visible. And so when there was like and he was the one who kind of like triggered the whole like the school getting involved by like when he like yanked her hearing aids out and like she started bleeding like that's what caused the principal to come in and talk to them. And then what I thought was really interesting was how like the teacher, he basically like called him out and like he was like, "Yo, like it's Shoya. Like everyone knows it's Shoya." And then basically everybody around, like everyone in the classroom, like agreed. They were like, "Yeah, it was him. It was totally him. It was all him." Even though like they had all been doing it as well. And like that was like a moment where it's like the teacher probably had the best of intentions, where he was just trying to like fix the problem. And as he saw it, like that was the problem, was Shoya was the problem. But in a way, like that kind of like ended up fucking Shoya over so hard in the long run because everybody would just single him out as being like, oh, he was the bully, and like everyone else, like we all are completely, we have no responsibility. It was all on him, and then he just became the target as well. So I thought it was like interesting, like I feel like in another anime, like when if it was like if it was a moment like that where the teacher like calls out the bully, you'd be like, this guy, he's cool. And it's like, yeah, he probably had the best of intentions, but like I said, it definitely like was not the 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 outcome that led to the most positive result.
Yeah, I definitely felt bad for Shoya there, because it was a group effort for sure, and we like saw parallels in like this same exact kind of dialogue when he was like a teenager, and that blonde haired girl, what was her name?
Kawhi.
Kawhi.
Kawhi, yeah,
Kawhi was like, "You bullied that girl," and he's like, "Well, you did it too." And then she just like freaked out and was like, "No, it was you." And
yeah,
they're all like,
Yeah.
"You bully," and I don't. I'm not 100% sure what they're trying to convey with that, but it was definitely just like felt bad for Shoya.
I mean,
It
that's like
seemed.
something that actually happens. Like a person will be like, you like were in this with me together," and they're like, "No, it wasn't me. How dare you accuse me?" And they like make a scene out of it. And she
yeah,
like does that twice or maybe even three times in the movie.
yeah. She did it once when they were kids and once when they were like older as well.
Yeah, and she like
When
she like tries to put the blame on them and like completely turn it around on Shoya, and it's like I've seen somebody do that firsthand, and it's like pretty fucked up, and like it works. If you're like if
exactly.
you're like generally a trustworthy person, like it's pretty easy to just go ahead and turn it around on somebody.
Yeah, and it was, like, the way that, like, he was just an outcast, right? So, like, because of that and because, both because of, like, his actions and, like, how everyone turned on him when he was in grade school, and then also, like, now in high school because of, like, the trauma that he's, like, experienced through that, and, like, that he's unable to, like, form connections with people, like, she is easily able to just, like, say, like, "Look, like, who are you gonna believe? Are you gonna
Mm.
believe this guy who doesn't have any friends and doesn't talk to anyone, or are you gonna believe me who's, like, presents herself as like this upstanding person, and
Yeah.
it's like she's like I'm not saying that she's like the devil or anything, like she's just someone who's made mistakes and like she's just using her position to avoid having to deal with the repercussions of that. But it's like that's it's just like I mean yeah, you like you said it's real shit. Like that's like how people act and how they like try to avoid getting being put responsibility on for like things that they did.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I really liked how like the characters felt really real. Like these felt like things that people would really do, and like if somebody was actually suffering from like severe anxiety and depression, like him, like I remember at the very end of the movie, somebody made a comment about Shoko like constantly saying sorry, and like that's a very real thing. Like they don't
Hmm.
know what to say in response to anything, so they just constantly say sorry, and then you say stop saying sorry, and then they say sorry, I'll stop
Mm.
saying sorry. It's like it's very
Yeah.
like you don't know what you're doing, and you're extremely anxious in like social situations, and the way they portrayed that with like the entire cast and like how they played into it was really great. Like I really liked the uh the scene where they're at the fair and like the whole uh the Ferris wheel scene like after that, like how defenseless that Shoko felt as she's just being berated and bullied in the Ferris wheel car, and like you don't hear anything about it until like
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah,
the
that's bad.
brother comes and tells him. Like Shoko doesn't reach out to Shoya or anything and say this person was bullying me in the train car, and like you don't hear anything about it until the brother actually has to come and, or sorry, the sister, keep saying brother, has to like come and tell that she was being bullied. And like I don't know, in that situation, like if Shoya wasn't so severely anxious, like he probably would have tried to like confront Ueno and be like, hey, don't come around anymore, you're not welcome because you're bullying my friend. But because he's like that unstable and like anxious, like he can't just go up and say, Please stop this."
Yeah, and it also makes sense, like, how they're, like, specifically, like, what we've seen earlier on in the movie would, like, affect them to do that, right? Because, like, he's not the type of person anymore to, like, be super aggressive and upfront with people because, like, when he was, like, trying to like, that's basically, like, when he was bullying,
Yeah.
in grade school. He was being super aggressive and, like, he got super punished for it. So it makes sense that, like, that's not, like, behavior that he would wanna do again, right? He's not the type of person who would just, like, immediately, like, stand up for his friends, one, because he's not used to having them, and then also because, like, he doesn't he kind of shies away from being, like, aggressive or at, like, the center of attention. And then it also makes sense that, like, Shoko, doesn't tell him about it, right? Because, like, she kind of feels like, her coming into, like, school basically, like I mean, obviously, like it's not her fault, but, like, it ended up ruining, like, their entire friend group, right? So, like, she probably just feels like she doesn't want to, like, go do that again, right? She's like, "Wow, like, these people are, like, reconnecting, and, like, I don't wanna, like, put that in jeopardy by, like, telling Shoya what happened." So, like you said, they feel like real people, and I think a lot of it is because, like, we see, like, the cause of, like, why they act certain ways, and then, like, it makes sense when they do that.
It's just like really well done like throughout the entire movie. It's just something that keeps, I don't know, it's something that kept like while I was watching it, I was like every time somebody did something, I was like, well, they would act like, I don't know. It's like a very big problem in movies where people just don't act like real people. Like you know, like
Yeah.
classic example, it's like
Especially
a
in
horror
anime.
movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
but like yeah, anime for sure. And it's just like this one, like every single time somebody did something, I'm like, that's pretty realistic. Like somebody would probably do that in the situation, or they wouldn't do that in the situation. Like as I was watching, I was like, wow, that's I like made a note of it, and I was like, it's pretty great.
I would say
Yeah.
most characters acted like how I think a real person would, but I know I was talking earlier that I liked the like comparison between Ueno and uh Shoya, but I would say Ueno was probably the one that like was least understandable, just because like there was never really an explanation as to why she was such like a bitch, like straight up like bullying a deaf girl like as a 13-year-old. Like, okay, like you're a child basically, so it's pretty understandable that you don't understand what her problem is and you just want to make fun of her because she's different. But then, we're in high school and you're bullying as practically an adult, another an adult for being deaf. Like, I don't know how many people like that I've ever met. I don't think I've ever met anybody that would bully a deaf person. So that was the
Well,
one
I don't
thing
We
that
think
were
that
was
covered
she's
on
like,
it
that she's
earlier, though.
bullying her because she's deaf. I think that she, like, legitimately, like, it's because of I don't think she would bully a random deaf person on the street. I think it's
Yeah,
because it's her, because, like, I'm sure that she has a lot of, like, I mean, for one, some people, like, well, I don't know, like, I feel like everybody has a reason to just, like, be an asshole if they are an asshole, but, like, um, I don't know, like, I think for her, like, if I like, I would say probably, like, she feels um like, she feels like she probably feels guilty about, like, selling out, Shoya, and she's, like, projecting all those feelings, like, onto the girl, right? Because, like, she, like, has all these pent up emotions that she's never dealt with, like, she's never like, she just, like, ran into him, right? Like, it's not like she made any effort to, like, mend that, like, she's just been keeping that all inside. So, I mean, like, uh I'm not saying it's justifiable, but I think it's, like, at least understandable.
yeah,
yeah.
I
I
would
think
just
I
like
think you
that
touched on it
explored
earlier.
a little bit.
I think you
Uh
touched on it earlier. Just the fact that the comparison between Ueno and Shoya is just like Shoya was stopped basically like from bullying, and Ueno never got that same negative reinforcement for bullying. And by the time that they're older, she's still kind of in that bully mode, maybe not as much. But the fact that she sees Shoko, and in her mind, like she goes back to middle school and says, okay, this is an easy target, and like, hey Shoyo, let's mend our relationship by doing what we used to do. And that's what she kind of gets at. She starts doing the same exact things she was doing in middle school. And like when you don't learn to stop that behavior, like there are plenty of just asshole adults that like do stupid shit because they were never taught not to. And
I
like
completely agree. I completely agree.
that's like I think that's Ueno's whole purpose. And I'd say like my least favorite thing about Ueno was I felt like she never really got any redemption throughout the movie, and like I never really understood them. Like I don't know, I felt like her quote unquote redemption was not very satisfying for me. And like I still would never want to hang out with, if I was in that situation, I would never want to hang out with this person because of what they've done and what they've done recently. Because like if it was a Wayno from just middle school, like she came in, I'd be like, okay, yeah, sure. But she's like continually bullied her as like a high schooler, and very recently. It's like I don't know. I just felt like they didn't give her a good, like there was a little cute moment at the end, but I don't know, it just didn't seem like there was ever like a resolution. And maybe it was off screen because Joko was going to all the people and trying to mend that relationship, so maybe we just didn't see it. But for me at least it wasn't very satisfactory to like allow Ueno to be part of this group.
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think
I agree. I just wanted to say real quick, I just would have loved, like, I know all these things that, like, she wasn't stopped from being a bully. I just would have liked like a little bit more insight from her end as to like how she's feeling, and then like, yeah, like a more satisfying like concluding thoughts from her on like, what this process looked like from her perspective, because she was like a pretty significant part of the story, at least when things went wrong. And then to not really have any development between like, like just by herself, like seeing what she's up to, what her thoughts are, I thought that would have been good for the story. I think it would have helped show kind of like all three sides, and instead they just decided to focus on two. I get it's a love story, but if they would have developed that a bit, I think it would have just wrapped up this movie a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of, like, for, like, why she's still bullying her, like, I think it makes sense because she kind of, like, basically explains it to her, like, in the Ferris wheel scene. Like, she just, like, sees her I mean, not that it's justified, but, like, she sees her as someone who is just, like, completely, like, wrecks everything. And, like, she wrecked their friend group when she, like, arrived in grade school, even though, like, Ueno is, like, probably projecting because in a way, like, she also, like, is pretty responsible because she was like the first person who spoke up against Shoya. So I mean, like, I think it makes sense for like why she was continuing it. But yeah, I do kind of like I see what you mean with like her not like redeeming herself because I agree. Like I don't think that like she is a redeemed character. Like I think that like, she never really apologized or anything like that. But like I think that, because like at the end of the movie, like she's like the last person. We haven't really touched on this yet, but like basically like how we see a lot of like through Shoya's perspective of like people with like X's on their face, and that's kind of like how they're like symbolized as like being like, well, because he can't look at people's faces, like that's like part of his anxiety, and so like that's like how that's like visually represented, and it kind of like makes him seem like more of an outcast because he like doesn't even see these people as like um as people that would even like talk to him or like would see him as a person, so he like doesn't see them as people either. And she's like the last person in the movie to like have an X on her face. um and I mean it does fall off in the end, but I think that's less of like Shoya thinking that she's redeemed herself and more just him being like, you know what, like it doesn't, like I have to deal with people that are not like that are going to be like assholes, and like I'm just gonna have to deal with that. And I think that that's kind of like what the X falling off of her face meant was like, yeah, it's like, even though she's like an asshole, she's still a person that like I'm going to have to interact with, or that like there are people like that that I'm going to have to interact with. So, I'm just gonna, like, I think that's what the X not being there means is like that he sees them as a person because he thinks that they have the potential to do the same to him.
Yeah, I really like the whole X on the face thing because like I thought it was a great like
Yeah, me
visual
too.
representation of his anxiety and like the fact that he can't look at people in the face. I think there's an actual name for like the mental disorder or something, but it's something I really liked was with uh uh what's her name? Person we're talking about with
Ueno?
Ueno.
UNO.
The fact that the X on her face like the first time he meets her again, it drops like
Yeah, and then it
immediately,
comes back.
and then it comes back, and then I think that happens again later on. And like the
Uh-huh.
fact that his anxiety is like represented like, okay, well, okay, he sees a friendly face, like this is somebody he knows like from a long time ago. He's familiar with, so he's not as not quite as scared. And like he hasn't seen her in a while, so like he's kind of like let his guard down. But then as soon as she goes back to that behavior, like his anxiety just says, okay, this person is like a stranger to me, and like I don't feel comfortable with them. And then yeah, it happens. I think one more time later on after maybe it's after the Ferris wheel. Um,
Yeah. Or
Hmm.
after he finds out about the Ferris wheel, I
yeah,
think.
after he finds out about the Ferris wheel, and I don't think it falls off until like pretty close to the end of the movie.
Yeah, like the last scene, I think, or like
Yeah,
one of the last
and
scenes.
like that's
Her
such a good
last scene.
representation of just like how this person is breaking his trust and like just like the shitting on his character. Like she's completely defiling like everything he wants to believe in her, and like that's her character. She's like not a good person. And like I said, I didn't like how her thing was resolved, and I don't know, maybe the manga does it differently, but
Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of like I agree that like I would have probably liked more of like a resolution for her arc, but I do like the fact that the X falls off of her face even without her like redeeming herself. That like at the end of the day, it's like his decision to like forgive and like to see her as someone who is like that he can potentially have a relationship with, like not like a
yeah,
intimate romantic relationship, but just like a person to person relationship with, right? And
yeah,
like that's like his decision. It's not like dependent on her actions. Like he's just saying, you know what, like I'm gonna try to put myself in a position where everyone, like no matter what they've done, I can like look at them as a person. And I feel like that kind of recontextualizes what the X like meant, right? Because for like it is in his head. So it's not like it's like all about his perception of people. And I mean like yeah, it's like they perceive him as like being an outcast, but it's also on him to like perceive other people as people that are like worthy looking at and like giving your time to.
yeah,
So I like that it's like it's not just like as one-sided as just like, oh, everyone hates him, so he's an outcast. It's also kind of like, everyone hates him, which like led him to like perceive everyone a certain way, which like led to him being an outcast. Like I like that it's like in his head. It's not just like the world fucked him over, so like he has no power in this situation. Like he does actually have control over his own thoughts, which I thought was
Yeah,
like a
and
good.
and when he gets to that point in the at the very end of the movie where all the X's falls off, like
Hmm.
I feel like his character is has advanced to the point, and like because of the events that Shoko has put into place, where it's like reviving this group that they had going for a little bit. Like he's in a much more comfortable space that he's like, it's not the X isn't falling off of her face because he might trust her or like that he trusts like everybody, but he's in a much better position at that point to like have a proper evaluation and like properly judge people by what they're doing and like make that call for himself whether or not he wants to be friends with them. He's just a lot more open to like his surroundings, and his anxieties allowing him to like interact with these people that he wasn't able to because of that interact with before. So yeah, it's not that he trusts all these people. I think it's just the fact that he's in a position that he can actually start a relationship with them if he needs to and if he wants to.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, go ahead.
I was
I
just
was
gonna say,
talking about
like, one relationship in the movie that they kind of like revisited real quick was the one with Shimada when Ueno was like, "Hey, like, I want this particular food," and like Shimada happens to be like the cashier at the stand,
that. Uh-huh.
and he like sees him and like freezes up, and he has like his anxiety moment. And then after that, a couple scenes later, he's like, well, wasn't he just doing the same thing that I did with Joko? And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe they'll have some kind of resolution to this, but they didn't really. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a really good point and a really good realization by him, and I thought it was a little jarring that they didn't really develop it. It was a good thought for sure, but he didn't really do anything with that information. I guess that's okay, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I thought that including Shimada was like an interesting choice, and the fact that he's like meeting his former bullies in the form of Ueno and Shimada, and like you said, it's the same thing that he did with Shoko. And I also was a bit disappointed because they when he falls trying to save Shoko, they say later on that Shimada and like the other guy that was bullying him pulled him out of the river, like took him to the hospital, and like I don't know. I feel like either they needed to expand that a whole lot or just cut it entirely. Like the fact that Shimada shows up for that little bit and then he shows up, or not even shows up, he just gets name dropped saying that he saved them from a river. It just seems a little pointless, and like I didn't know exactly where they're going. And like you said, I thought it was pretty interesting. Like that question of this is exactly what I was doing with Shoko, and yeah, they just never touched on it again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like a lot of like I don't know. I think a lot like yeah, I do like agree that like I think that there are like that particular is like a thread that is like it's kind of like a loose end, like we don't get like a nice resolution for it. But I also kind of like I would prefer it like I think I would prefer it as it is than to it like I would definitely prefer if it did get a resolution. But I also would prefer it as it is as to like as opposed to like it not being there at all. Because I think that is like an interesting thought, even if it's just like a nugget. It's not like a full it's not like a fully realized idea, but it's just sort of like an interesting like seed that's like planted in his mind, and it's also like planted in our mind that like yeah, like there is a lot of parallels between how he was bullied and how like he bullied Shoko. So like there's you know it's not like he's blameless in this.
Yeah, and I do
So
think the thought is a very interesting thing, and the thing that I was thinking about when he says it is like this is just more fuel for his anxiety. Like, okay, this person Ueno that I really don't trust right now, or like I'm not super comfortable with, is trying to get me to like be friends with this other person that previously bullied me with, and I'm very uncomfortable with, and that like this person's not trying to reach out to him at all. Like so, this very uncomfortable situation for him, and he comes away with it thinking, okay, but like, did I put Shoko in the same uncomfortable situation? Is what I'm doing like right now? Is my relationship with Shoko and her sister is that okay right now? Like, because I am not okay in this situation that directly parallels it.
mhm.
So is Shoko okay, or is she just acting, or is she really deep down still scared of me, like I am of these two people? So yeah, I do think it's a very interesting nugget. I just wish it had been fleshed out more.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, I haven't read the manga, but it's like I mean, it's like a looking on the mal, I think it's like 7 volumes or something. It's like there's no way that you're gonna be able to compress 7 volumes of manga and, like, actually get everything like,
Mm,
in 2 hours of
that
movie
makes
time.
sense.
So, like, I'm sure that these are like, this and, like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if, like, Ueno's story had a more, like had a different spin in, like, the manga where it was more fleshed out. Um so, yeah, I mean, that's just one of the tragedies of adaptation, but I do think that, like, this is, like, a very, very solid adaptation, just because, like, maybe, like, not all of the plot points were carried over, but I do think that, like, it did the one thing that, like, every adaptation should strive to do, and that's, like, to use full advantage of, like, the medium that you're adapting it to.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, like, I definitely think that, like, I can't imagine like, I don't really feel any desire to read the manga, to be honest, just because, like, I feel like the visuals brought so much and, like, the soundtrack, everything, the directing was just, like, on such, like, a high level where it's, like, even though, like, all of, like, not all of the ideas that were planted got, like, to fully bloom or whatever, um, I feel like just kind of being there and, having the package be so nice, and,
Yeah.
like, also having a bunch of, like, interesting kind of like ideas that are there, just, like, made it a really enjoyable experience.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that I want to rewatch this movie. I actually might just read the manga because just like a brief searching on the internet, basically the consensus that I saw was that the manga is better in every way except for the ending. The movie does a better ending than the manga. So I
Interesting.
think like
Hmm.
if it's better than the movie, then I definitely think. I mean, obviously, like you said, it's going to be missing like all the advantages of like the animation, and I do think
Mhm.
the animation was beautiful, the soundtrack was beautiful, and it worked really well. But if it's considered better, then I got to check it out at least.
Definitely, yeah.
One scene that I thought was pretty good, pretty impactful was I don't remember her name. I think her name was like Sarah. Is that what it was? The
Oh,
friend
Sahara?
Oh,
Yeah.
Sahara. I'm gonna call her
Sahara.
Sarah. So like they were about to go up the roller coaster, and then Shoya sits next to her, and they're going up the incline
Oh,
to
yeah.
go on the drop, and then she was like, "Oh, like I used to be like super afraid of people and doing like scary things, but one point I was just like, you know what? I realized that I can choose to be scared of something." And she like looked him like dead in the eyes, and I think like she kind of knew what was up, and
Mhm. That
he
was a
kind
great
of
scene.
yeah he
Yeah.
kind of had like a little realization, and like just the going down on the drop, and it's just definitely like just a big parallel for like what's going on in his life right now, just like
Yeah.
the diving back into making friends and connections. It's something that he can choose to be afraid of, and with the exes being like basically all in his head and everything, there's a lot of self-inflicted fear in this movie, but rightfully so. And it's a pretty good movie about like I guess even like mental illness, or I guess you could qualify this as mental illness. It's not like
Yeah,
genetic, but it's
definitely.
it's like a learned mental illness or an inflicted one. And I thought that was a pretty good scene. It definitely gave some inspiring words to our buddy Shoya here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how she, like, doesn't even say, like, "Oh, I am not scared anymore." She's just like, "I
Yeah,
used to be really scared of roller coasters, and I would never ride them, but now I ride them." And she's like, "I'm still scared of them, but I just do them. I ride them anyway because they're, like, also really fun."
Well,
And
doesn't
so,
she
like
says like I learned not to be scared of something until I like actually tried it, and then I can make my judgment on whether or not to be scared of it, which is like a really
yeah,
good
yeah,
take.
yeah, exactly. Because she was basically, like, saying, like, her fears were, like, preventing her from even doing things where
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
yeah.
Which is it's a great parallel with Shoya and the exes. Like his fears are preventing him from even trying to establish these relationships.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I really like Sahara as a character. Like I honestly think you could have made a movie about her because like her own story is like really interesting, and she has a lot of parallels with Shoya. Like the fact that
Yeah.
like Shoya calls her out at the very end, or like towards the middle, I guess, when he calls everyone out, and like he calls her out for still being the same person that she was back then and running away from her problems and being scared. And like she has her own mental illness that she's dealing with. And I thought that she was a very interesting character and a very interesting parallel because she's also friends with Shoko, and that kind of falls apart um, towards the middle of the movie, and it gets resolved by the end in a pretty good way. And she still seems pretty good friends with everybody. Yeah, I just thought she was a great character.
Yeah, that was, like, a great scene. I, like, had almost forgotten about that until Griffin brought it up, but, like, yeah, I love how, like, just how, like, she basically is just like, "Look, it's on you, like, it's on you may have done bad things, and bad things may have happened to you, but, like, you have control over, like, what you do today." And I love shit like that. Like, that's, like, a very, empowering message. I
Yeah,
like it.
One more scene in particular I wanted to bring up was when they were like, let's see, Shoya. It was basically like everybody was there, like his new friends. It was after the roller coaster scene, and they're basically confronting Shoya for being a bully, but then like kind of apologizing at the same time for like bringing it up earlier. And like Shoya just like crumples to the floor, and he's just like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I don't want to be reminded of this. And he basically
Mhm.
like reverts back to being a bully, and then immediately pushes everyone away. But he's like covering his mouth, so I guess Shoko might not have gotten the full message, and she's like the
yeah,
only one left there. And I don't know. I mean, it's very similar to what happened when they were children, and I think that he got one final taste of what it's like, of why you shouldn't be an asshole. I guess it was a little wrongful. He kind of got harped on, but
yeah.
basically told everyone to
I
go away.
I I think that's one of my more favorite scenes in the movie when he's calling everybody out because to me at least, like the reasons that he's calling them out like are pretty justified. I mean, maybe not like Sahara or like some of the other people, but like it's the second scene where we see Kawhi do the oh my god, you calling me a bully?
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah.
that's so he's calling her out for doing that, and then he calls out Ueno for being like not a nice person, and like they're relatively justified, but also like the context of the scene means like, okay, you could have approached this entire thing a lot better instead of just straight up calling them out in this whole thing. And like
Yeah.
pushing away your one really good friend with Nagatsuka,
Yeah.
like he was like by your side the whole time. And honestly, I thought the his quote unquote criticism for it for Nagatsuka was a bit it wasn't that bad. Like it was pretty
Yeah.
tame compared to some of the other ones, but yeah, like that scene where he just pushes everybody away again because he's like scared and he's like uncomfortable. And then like you said, it might not seem like Shoko gets the whole message because he's covering his mouth, he's got his head down and his legs. But then like immediately after he pushes everyone away and everyone leaves. He pops his head up and with like a almost like a happy grin, he's like, "So what are we gonna do tomorrow?" Or like, "Do you want to like hang out tomorrow or something?" And it just like pans up to Shoko's face, and she's like on the verge of tears. And it's like, so she's like may not have been able to understand like what he had said to these people or why they left and like what he had done, but like
Yeah.
she realized like what he just did was not okay, and like by pushing all these other people away, he also pushed Shoko away, and like that's like the crux of the situation and how he learns from it because like he really wants to be with Shoko and like be friends with Shoko. So like he immediately realizes at that point like okay, well, what I did just now was not cool because obviously I have upset Shoko and like that means I've done something wrong. So yeah, that scene
Mhm.
was excellent.
Yeah, I actually, like I think that, like, Shoko being deaf is, like, pretty genius because, like, for a lot of scenes, you're kind of, like, questioning whether or not she can, like, understand, like, what's going on. Like, you're
Yeah.
you're kind of, like, unsure of, like, what her perception of the situation is because she can't hear what the people are saying, right? So you're, like, kind of like, how like, can she read lips? Like, does she just, like, understand through, like, people's body language? What is her understanding of the situation? And for one, it like, constantly thinking about that, like, just really like puts into perspective, like a holy shit, like a deaf person is probably constantly just have so many questions in their mind,
Yeah.
so they just constantly have to like piece things together based on like the limited information that they have access to. But then also, it's like by like having us always think that way, like about her, it's kind of like, that like everyone only has like limited information when they like interact with people, you know, like they only know what the person is saying and like what they're doing. They don't understand like their entire context of their situation. So like I feel like that was like really good to like both put us in Shoko's shoes, but then also to kind of like feel like that's like one of the bigger themes of like the story is that like, you know, in any other situation, you'd like Shoya would be the bad guy because he's a bully. But like because like we see like his entire context and like the entire situation, we like feel sympathy for him as the main character. So I think that like having Shoko as like a deaf character kind of just like gets the viewer in that mindset in like a really clever way and like kind of like primes them to be thinking about the main themes of the movie.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
really
that's
like.
a good
Oh, go
point.
ahead.
I was gonna say that's a good point because, like,
Yeah,
if you didn't get the message of the movie, just like look at Shoya or sorry Shoko, and like she's kind of like an emblem for like everything that goes wrong in the movie, and that just somebody doesn't fully understand someone's position, and there was some kind of miscommunication, and then that creates a problem, and she kind of
yeah.
just like spells that out for you by existing. It's a good point.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
like Shoyo or Shoko was used like such a good example of like a really well executed dramatic irony where like the reader knows or the viewer knows something that the people don't. And I thought that her entire setup throughout the movie was like multiple instances of dramatic irony. Like we just mentioned one where she might not know the full extent of why he pushed them away, but she knows something. But like as a viewer, you know exactly what he said and why they pushed him away, and then it just like happens throughout the movie because she's deaf and like it's used in such a great way, and then it's flipped up on its head where as a viewer we get subtitles or you watch it in English or something, and when she says like show ya I love you, like as you as a viewer know, okay, she's saying I love you, like she's confessing the fact that she loves him, and that is a very important thing because like the movie kind of been building that to that point, and
Hmm.
then Shoya misunderstands her and he doesn't understand what she says. So it really flips the dramatic irony where the entire movie Shoko has not been, or the viewer has been understanding things that Shoko hasn't, but now the viewer is understanding something that Shoya does not. So I don't know. I really liked how dramatic irony was used in this entire movie, and the fact that the one of the main characters being deaf was like the catalyst for how it was used.
Yeah, I totally agree, like, dramatic irony is just, like, yet another thing that has, like, so much thematic weight to the
Yeah,
movie because it's
exactly.
all about people's, like, inability to, like, fully understand and, like, the fact that the ways that we have as humans to communicate is there are inherent limitations to it. Like, it's not a full brain dump. It's like you only have words to communicate, and, like, a lot of times they will fail you. And so and sometimes you don't even have words, like, when you're talking to deaf people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really like yeah, the just like, the themes of the movie like, really interesting, and then also they're just, like, conveyed in such like a really, really good and, like, well thought out way, you know? It wasn't just like, "Oh, we're gonna make a story, and, like, we're gonna convey these themes," and, like, kind of fumbling your way to it. I feel like the entire story was kind of, like, constructed to convey the point, which is, like, what I really, really love to see, in, like,
Yeah.
movies and stuff. Yeah.
I another really small scene kind of towards the beginning. I think it was probably in the first 20 minutes that shows just like the struggle that Shoko goes on like a daily basis was the like they first introduced that she's deaf and like the teacher says okay she's deaf and like she shows them the notebook to like that you got to communicate with me in here or I probably won't understand you because I can't speak and I'm
Mhm.
she's probably not at the point where they can read lips, and at this point in the movie nobody else speaks or does sign language, and immediately after like setting all that up, the teacher just starts teaching normally, like completely
Yeah.
disregarding like everything he just set up. And Shoko's just like, wait, what's going on? Like, where am I supposed to turn in this page? What is he talking about? And she has to look around and get help from everybody around her to like actually be able to exist with them and like learn with them in this classroom. So like it's a really small scene, but like very quickly sets up the struggle that Shoko has to go through on a daily basis, and like establishes it for the rest of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like the just in general, like, the beginning of the movie was, like, really, really good in terms of, like, setting everything up, like, because
Oh yeah,
the way that like, I mean, we cut back, like, the first thing is, like, we see Shoya, like, basically, like, almost kill himself, but then he decides not to.
Yeah.
But then, like, once we go and see the flashback and, like, see everything leading up to it, and you're like, "Whoa, this kid's, like, kind of an asshole."
Yeah.
And, like, he's, like, basically, like, he's just bullying this girl. But then, like, I love when we, like, flash forward again to, like, him going to school, and just, like, the first time we see the exes, it's just, like, you just immediately understand. You immediately understand, like, exactly, like, it's almost like in that moment, he goes from being, like, a character who you, like, feel who's like, "Wow, this guy's a dick," to, like, just being like, you get the sympathy, you, like, understand it's like characterization, but it's, like, not even a moment, you know? It's not even, like, a character moment for him. It's just, like, portraying how he sees the world, which is,
Yeah.
like, really, really good.
I thought starting the movie with him like about to commit suicide and like it like sets it up very subtly at first. It's like his calendar says like today's the day or something, and he like gives his
Yeah.
sister money and like quits his job and stuff, and it's like very subtle. And then you see him on the bridge like thinking about it. Like that's like a very powerful opening to a movie, and you're like, okay, how did this character get here? I'm like the fact that after that, like the movie sets him up to be like an asshole
Mhm.
is pretty powerful and like pretty ballsy move because like as like a lot of things would be like okay suicidal character and like it's a powerful opening but why should I care, and instead of going immediately like into how he was bullied they show him being bullied because like that's the story, and like to get the full understanding of like the struggles of his character and like his depression and his anxiety you need to know the fact that previously he was a bully, and like this is like where his character ends up and why his character ends up there. But yeah, very good opening for a movie.
Dude, why are movies and shows with time skips just like 1,000 times better than movies without time skips? It's like lore for the show. It's just so good.
We can
Um,
fully establish that when we do our next episode on Promise Neverland because I there is a time skip in the next episode.
oh,
Oh, shit, I haven't watched it
I
yet.
haven't
Yeah,
watched
Nice.
either. Are you serious,
uh,
Will? Did you just spoil that for me, bro?
it's not that big of a spoiler. It's one episode in a series. Calm down. Um,
It's fine.
another thing to talk about we have not touched on at all was Yuzuru, the sister of Shoko. I thought
Mhm.
she was another just absolutely fantastic character. She has her own little arc. She seems like the sister dynamic is like so wholesome and so well done. Like at first she's kind of protective and then she kind of befriends Shoya, and through that like you get to see the conflict in their own house, like when Shoya takes back Yuzuru and the mother just slaps him,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
uh Yuzuru's like pretty baffled but like kind of understands it, and then Shoko is like completely oblivious to this whole thing. But then like throughout the movie you see Shoya and Yuzuru just become really really good friends, and Yuzuru develops as a character because she like realizes okay, my sister wants me, or like my sister and my mother want me to be a better person, so they show that by them entering her photos in a photo contest, because they realize like on her own she probably wouldn't do this. Like
Well,
she
can you
wants
repeat that real quick? You turned into a robot for like a split second for
sorry.
me. You're good.
They send her photos into the photo contest because they realize at that point like she probably wouldn't do this on her own. She wants to take her pictures, but she's too anxious to like actually like show them to people or like do anything with them. And so they want what's best for her and they want her to show off her talent. And then also later on with you get like the really great character development with her and her grandmother. Like her grandmother's always giving her food and drink, and like it sets up a very small relationship, but like it's small enough and it's impactful enough that like it hits when the grandmother dies, and uh, Yuzuru is walked to the funeral by Shoya, and she's like, "All right, you can just leave me here." Like originally, she's like, I don't want you to walk with me. Like I'm going somewhere." And he's like, "I'm gonna walk with you. I'm free right now. Like I have nothing to do." They get there and she's just like, "Yeah, this kind of sucks. All right, I'll be going now." And Shoya's like, "Oh man, this fucking sucks." Like he realizes this is a relative, and then she like turns around. She's just like, "Yeah, I am not okay, Shoya. Like this really sucks." And I was like, "Holy shit, that is such a sad moment." Like Yuzuru, the entire movie had been like a pretty proud and pretty confident character, other than like when she's like kind of scared of Shoko and she's like hiding in the playground. But like and then that like moment of weakness is like such a good like development moment. It's like she's not just this super confident character that goes around and makes fun of people or whatever. Like she has her own weaknesses and like her own bonds, and the strength of the bond with her sister and her grandmother was just, it was excellent. Very good character.
Yeah, the grandmother was really well written because she said, "Don't read in the dark, or you'll lose your eyesight." Thought that was a very grandmotherly thing to say,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that yeah, everything you said too, for sure. I agree. She Yuzuru got exposed as being a soft child. That's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
She's
Also,
doing
Yeah,
a
and
lot.
it totally makes sense that she would like be putting on a strong front because like she feels like she feels like she needs to like do that for her sister, right? Because like she needs to like take care of Shoko in so many different ways. Even though she's the younger sibling. So I like that her being like a source of strength kind of gets flipped on its head because it's like she has so much responsibility that she's like just not equipped to handle because she's younger and she's like she doesn't have years of I mean, she doesn't have a lot of experience just being a human being, so it makes sense.
also she transforms from like a more of an active protective role to more of like a supportive role with Shoko, because like at the beginning she's like literally protecting her, saying like you can't see her, she's not here, go away. But like by the end of the movie, like after Shoko helps her with like the photo stuff and just like is a good sister and like they have a good bond, like she's like, okay, well I have not been to school in a long time, and Shoko does and would want me to go to school and like be a better person and like develop as a human being. So for her, I will do that because I want her to be happy. And even if that means like I have to go to school and I don't like it, like, and people have to see me in the stupid uniform, and like, well, I will do it for her because she is my sister and I love her, and like it's a very beautiful relationship between the two.
I
Yeah.
guess we should talk about the ending because I guess we haven't really. Specifically, I guess the suicide attempt by Shoko, and she's just like, everybody hates me, and everybody blames their problems on me, and everybody has to, I would guess, protect me. And she decides that she wants to jump off a building, and it's very strange because the scene itself right before was very beautiful, and then it kind of transitioned into a suicide attempt, and Shoya is just like, doing everything in his power to save her, and she has a realization that, okay, maybe I probably should die, and she like grabs a nearby ledge. And I mean, it definitely parallels Shoya. There's definitely a cycle of I am feeling overwhelmed by my social surroundings, and now I want to kill myself. And in the case of Shoya, his mom was like, "If you kill yourself, I'm gonna burn all this money, and everything you've done for me will be worthless." And with Shoko, I mean, Shoya was there to help. And, I kind of like that, the domino effect of this movie of, oh, the bad communication and the bullying. One person gets bullied, another person gets bullied. Somebody moves schools, and, hearing aids are broken. And, it kind of just amasses into a really sticky situation. And, it leads to somebody getting blamed for it. And then their life goes into shambles. But then with, Shoya, he tried to kill himself, but he was saved by another person. And then, because he was saved, or had a realization that maybe he shouldn't kill himself, it was a little bit of both. He was able to save Shoko. And so I like that this show kind of shows both sides. I know this movie shows both sides of the coins. So I think it was a pretty solid ending. Definitely reflected a lot of the central themes that the movie was trying to convey. Like, okay, you do a good thing, it's just gonna snowball into more good things. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. The end of the day, it's just about, a lot of stuff. All the things I just said. Not gonna summarize that again. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, about like the reverse side of like um, like the reverse side of like the bullying domino effect is like the anti-bullying domino effect, like the saving from suicide domino effect. Yeah, I like that. It's like it's good, and I like the yeah, I mean, like, it definitely fits with, like, the overall, it fits with, like, like, Sahara said on the roller coaster, you know? It's like, you can just decide if things are scary, like, as they come. Like, just try them out, you know? Like, you can't if you kill yourself, you can't try anything new. So, you're just deciding that everything is too scary. So I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I like what Griffin said with the fact that her suicide was like contrasted with the beautiful fireworks scene because like it's like right before that, like they're on the lawn and they're all watching the fireworks and um you get to see like all the other characters like watching the fireworks and like that entire like slow, very slow paced, slow burn scene with just them watching the fireworks. And then like it really sets up a tone. And then to have like a suicide attempt and like not like a very like obviously it didn't end up being gruesome, but like the idea of somebody jumping off a building, like a very high building, is a pretty gruesome thought, especially like after such a beautiful scene. Like that contrast
Mhm.
really amplifies the impact of that suicide scene. And yeah, overall, like I thought that was a very sudden, but also like I was like, "Oh my god." Like once you realize it when you're watching the scene, you're like, "Okay, she went home, but all the lights are off." And he goes in there and then he sees her on the balcony and like he's realizing the same time the viewer is realizing like, "Okay, she is about to commit suicide. Like she is trying to kill herself." Like that is a very scary realization and like the fact that the viewer is doing it at the same time as Shoya is and like how sudden it is in the movie, but also like it's not sudden to the point where like okay that's out of left field, like that's stupid, like they didn't establish this at all. Like it's a very believable thing. Like it's established that she is a very imperfect person and like she has her mental illness, like she is not okay, but she's very anxious and like the fact that we've seen Shoya like try to commit suicide earlier is like enough setup as it is and just like it's a sudden but like it's very fitting piece and a very interesting piece because like not only are there potentially suicidal characters, the two main characters are both potentially suicidal. Like that's very interesting dynamic, and I thought it was covered very well.
Yeah, and, like, the juxtaposition of, like, the beautiful fireworks scene to, like, the next scene is a suicide attempt is just, like, reinforcing the point that the movie's making about, like, you never know, like, what someone's, like, full context is and, like, what they're going through, like, internally,
Yeah,
um, and so, like, just, like, the fact that, like, everybody else that was with her, like, at the festival watching the fireworks was, like, having such a great time, and, like, the scene was just basically, like, there was no hints that anything, like, dire would happen, during that scene. It wasn't until, like, the very next one that we, like, start, like, as you said, to realize as Shoya does. So,
yeah.
yeah, I think that that was, like, a really great scene.
It definitely like in my mind it was like immediately I was like, okay, like it's a pretty like common theme with depression. Like there's a lot of people that are depressed that just don't show it. Like a good example is like one of the more famous examples is Robin Williams, like one of the
Mhm.
funniest people to ever live, and he's like extremely depressed to the point where he killed himself. Or like the very common like the fable of Pagliacci the clown. He goes to the doctor and
Yeah.
says like the doctor says go see the clown in town and like I am the clown. I am very sad. And like yeah, you never know what somebody's actually feeling. Like they could be putting on a front the entire time. It's a very scary concept that somebody could be secretly suicidal. Um, and it's a very interesting concept to cover within the movie because suicide was already a pretty established theme going into it.
Yeah. And I mean, also, like, it's also set up with, like, the Ferris wheel scene, like, obviously, like, obviously, Shoko doesn't say much during that scene, but, like, the one thing that she, like, tries to convey to, like, Ueno, like, like, can barely even say it, but she's, like, trying to say, like, "I hate myself."
Yeah.
And, like, oh my god, that was such, like, a heavy moment, and,
Yeah, that
like,
scene is so sad.
yeah. And then it just, it makes sense that that would, kind of
Yeah,
serve as,
also
like, a
like
setup.
also with that going back to the Ferris wheel scene, like she also says like Ueno says something like I hate you. I don't like she I don't know if she says like I don't know why I hate you, but I do. Like I hate
Mhm.
you and I have always hated you. And Shoko says something like I don't hate you. And then she later says like I hate myself. And like the fact that like
Yeah.
she's like trapped in this position and she's so so not confident in herself that she's just saying like, "I don't hate you, I hate myself. Please,
Yeah.
please understand that I hate myself." Like that's
And
so
that she's
sad
just,
and
like,
so true.
basically internalizing, like, all of these negative feelings that everyone around her has for
Yeah,
her. Oh my god.
yeah.
So fu
Mm,
Um, if you're looking for another character to talk about, it's a very small character, but like I don't know, the redhead guy that was friends with Kawhi. I feel like,
Mashiba.
He wa
yeah, I feel like he might have been another casualty of like the going from manga to anime because maybe in the manga it was
I
well established.
100% think
But
that, like,
like
he
Yeah.
other than
basically
that,
was, like, had no point.
he was just there to judge people. Like they established early, like I hate bullies. Like if anybody close to me was a bully, I would hate them. And like the
Yeah.
irony there is like he's friends with Kawhi, who was a bully. Um, but other than that, he didn't play much of a role in the movie, and I don't know, I didn't care for him too much, and I kind of he was just there, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
He's
just like
definitely
a
the one
device.
casualty of the adaptation that I would've like, I think that nothing would be lost if he was just not in the movie.
Yeah, I'd agree. He he's just like a device for him, for them finding out that he was a bully and people to get mad at him. Like that's what he did.
Yeah, he's, like, barely even like that like, yeah, barely even a device, like, he's I mean, yeah, he kind of is, but, like, that would be so easy to just, like, write a s I honestly think that, like, he's in there because he was probably a big character in the manga, and they wanted to have him on the poster so that people who read the manga would be excited.
One weird thing I thought in the anime was Kawhi comes up to him and he's like, Mashiba wants to be friends with you. And it's just like, why doesn't he just come up and say hi? Like who the hell says
Yeah, it was
that?
weird. I
That's
agree with that.
weird. Just go say hi to somebody. Introduce yourself. Anyway. I mean the soundtrack, that opening song, that was a great song for like kids being goofballs.
Yeah. Yeah, my
Yeah,
generation, yeah.
That was a good
yeah,
song.
exactly. It's really weird because you don't hear like classic rock and anime a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times, I mean, like I feel like the only other show that we've seen that had rock was FL or Fooly Cooly, and that was
Mhm.
like all the pillows. But like you don't hear like Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin or The Who. Uh,
Yeah.
and
And it
so
was
yeah, that
strictly
inclusion.
American or English, I should say, right? It
Yeah,
was
Yeah.
yeah, it was just
100%.
yeah, it was a very interesting inclusion, and I really liked it.
That was
Yeah.
probably the
I thought, like,
standout.
overall, the soundtrack was really, really solid in this
Yeah,
movie.
I sent you guys a song earlier, lit parentheses var. That is, it's such a good song. It's like pretty short. Like that's my one complaint when I was going back and listening to the soundtrack was, it's one of those soundtracks where it's like a lot of like 1 to 2 minute songs.
Dude,
Kind of Violet Evergarden was similar with that, but both are very good soundtrack.
in these like kind of like, hyper emotional, dramatic movies, shows, Violet Evergarden is a good example. I don't know. The soundtrack kind of just tends to drown out for me. That opening song is a definite standout, but the slower, like more orchestral kind of sounding stuff, like emotional songs, I don't tend to pick up too much on them because I'm so focused on the moment. So I mean, for this movie, like it never distracted me, which is good, but it's pretty hard for any movie or show for me, like a super like sensitive moment, me to even notice what song you're playing.
I
uh
feel like
just a general comment, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like if I were to play a couple, like, because I've been listening to the soundtrack for the past few days, if I feel like if I were to play a couple of songs for you, you'd like recognize them immediately because of those like emotional moments they hit. Because I remember like this is probably 2 or 3 months ago, we were doing something and we had like the Discord bot in, and I played a couple of Violet Evergarden songs on the soundtrack, and I remember you being like, "Oh yeah, I remember that," or like I remember this song in particular. So I feel like it's like something you may have not noticed as it's there, but you definitely would recognize it.
Yeah, it's just something I actually just need to do more of. Is just like listen to the soundtrack after the fact. I've done it with FLCL. I did it with Violet Evergarden. This one I'll probably listen to that intro song again because that song was sick. But
Honestly, the music is just magic. Like, the way
Oh yeah.
that, like, you're just associate it with certain memories and, like, when you hear it, you like just somehow think of it again. Like
Such an
it's
emotional response too.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
They must be like right next to each other in the brain.
yeah. I'm actually the guy who did this soundtrack is the same person who did the Devilman soundtrack, which is a completely different tonal shift between the two.
That is weird.
Devilman is like a high, fast-paced, almost electro,
Hmm.
uh, and this is the opposite. I mean, it still does have a little bit of that. It's not like traditional instruments, although there's a lot of piano, but there are still like some like synthesizers and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. Devilman is actually a show that the soundtrack stood out a lot to me because I kind of like stuff that like fits but is maybe a little bit more odd, I guess. Like that the Devilman soundtrack, like I would not expect like, it to sound like I don't know, a rave. And
yeah, I mean it was kind of established early with Devilman, like with the scene where they're in the nightclub, and they kill everyone. That it's like gonna be
It's like
that.
they
But yeah,
never left the nightclub, bro.
yeah, I
yeah.
really like that. That's a good soundtrack. But yeah, the contrast that that guy did that soundtrack and this soundtrack, and there's such different medium or like different story wise.
Genres, yeah.
Yeah, genres, pretty great. Um,
Yeah.
Animation, excellent. This is Kyoto Animation, right?
Yep.
Awesome, awesome, awesome animation. I loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I also really love the color palette in this movie.
Yeah, I agree.
It's very like pastel and warm and it definitely fits with like the kind of melancholy vibe of the movie. But also like there's some pinks like Shoko's hair that kind of make that kind of pop and like make you it's like it's a little hopeful. I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I do like the color palette. I mean, I'm looking at the image right now, but Shoya's brown suit. It's like brown, a little dusty, a little sad. Brown. I feel like I don't know, like an English iron worker would wear a brown suit to like church every Sunday. You know what I mean? Like, well,
Sure.
you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, also I
would
think
you
that
buy
like
a brown suit? No.
I don't know.
I
It would
mean,
definitely not be
depends
the
on the
first suit
situation.
that I buy.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I already had a bunch of other suits that were different colors, which I don't, I have like one suit. But
It
if
gives
I
me like
already had other color, like I would definitely get like navy, which I think is the one that I have. I would get black. I would get gray before I'd get brown.
let's see. It just gives me like kind of like Oliver Twist vibes, bro. It just seems like you're just
Okay, yeah, I can kind of see that.
okay,
I mean,
cool.
I think it would be kind of cool to have a brown suit.
I mean, yeah, it would be like a one-off like kind of deal. Be like, oh, look at
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. It
I'm
wouldn't be like a
like,
go-to, but it would be like if I'm really trying to spice things up in like a, but not in a like a bombastic sort of way, just in a like
Yeah.
ooh, a classic. But I mean, it was the school uniform, so I don't really think that he had much of a choice in the matter. It was more of like, yeah, definitely not a character thing, but yeah, like a visual kind of like, yeah, like the color palette. Yeah, yeah. I mean, also like just I think that the in terms of like the visuals, I think that like, um, I mean, this is directed by Yamada Naoko, the same lady who directed K-On! And like the K-On! Movie and stuff. And I mean, it's like crazy how like different the tone is. Obviously, like one is like just is like the cutest thing ever, and is like just like a feel good thing. But then also like this one is like obviously like super fucking sad. But I think that like she's just really good at like portraying like little things that like make it feel like what you're seeing is just like life, like it's really hard to explain, but like like some scenes where you just like or some like little visual things where you wouldn't see in like other anime, like when like show when fucking Shoya is like playing with his mechanical pencil and like getting it really close to the desk, and
yeah.
like and you can like see the like reflection, like the desk is like reflecting it three ways because of like the way that the light is, and it's just like shit like that that like really like bring you into the scene because it's like another anime he would just be like it would just be like a shot of the class sitting there and it would be a shot of his reaction. It wouldn't be like him doing something like as something else is happening, like just like things like that really like bring you into it, and I like that. I think it's good.
Yeah.
That's like something that she did that a lot in K-On! Too. Like there's like a lot of just like little moments where the characters are just doing something that like makes them seem more like a real character and like the place seem like it's like actually inhabited by people and stuff. Like it's good for portraying everyday life.
Yeah, it's kind of gives me like it's like what Rick and Morty. Okay, not to be a cringe here, but it's like what Rick and Morty does with dialogue. They do with animation, where it seems almost like improv animation, where it's like I don't know, just make them do something random, and they just like
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, whereas like the people are actually doing things where it's like similar how in like Rick and Morty, like people will stumble over their words because that's how people actually talk.
yeah, exactly, exactly the mundo. Now we just have to make a Rick and Morty anime. Just kidding, they already have one.
Yeah.
But you know, I think they actually have two.
It's called
Crazy.
Dr. Stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Doctor Stone.
Anyway, I mean, I feel like we summed up this movie. It's
Yeah.
it's pretty solid. Do either of you guys want to start with your score thoughts?
I love all the characters. I love the animation. I love the soundtrack. I love the story. I loved just the portrayal of bullying that it had. I love the portrayal of depression, anxiety, just not being able to face your fears. The portrayal of suicide and how that can affect people around you, and just like the immediate impact that it has on you as a person. Um, and I like the portrayal of friendship and like the bonds that you can make. I'd say my biggest drawbacks were probably just issues with bringing it from the manga to the anime. So I might adjust my score after I read the manga just because I'm curious. But that would be like Ueno, her resolution, and then like uh, uh, friend Mashiba, and also probably Shimada. Their whole story arcs, they felt like it could have been an issue going from manga to anime. But yeah, everything else absolutely excellent. I'd probably give it a 10.
Um, I would probably give this a 9. I love this movie. Like I basically I love like I think that the biggest thing that I really like about this movie is that it really does seem like when the author was like crafting this story, they like the entire story, like from like the narrative to like the characters was all like it came from the desire to like convey the idea of just like how people communicate and fail to communicate in the world. And like the fact that there are like so many different like writing choices in terms of like like the characters like with Shoko being deaf and like the exes and things like that that just like really like it just all helps to communicate that central like idea of just like the fact that communication is inherently limited and that like you can never really know the full context of someone's situation. I like that the whole movie is kind of centered around that theme. Um, and yeah, like everything in the execution was pretty much perfect. Like I loved like most of the characters. I mean, even like even like Ueno, like I don't like her as a person, but I think that like what she explored was like really interesting. And animation was great. Soundtrack was really good. Um, the directing was great. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I would say like my only problems are like basically the same as what you said, Will. Is just that like there are just certain things that I feel like were lost in the adaptation, and but I'm still glad that like I said earlier that they were included rather than just completely being cut because I'd rather have a little nugget of information rather than like not have that at all. So yeah, I'd give this like a 9. I really love it.
Um, I agree with both of you. There are some dead end characters in this anime, and it's a bit of a shame. Just some people that were underdeveloped and had maybe one or two important moments, but in terms of what their buildup was and what their conclusion was and who they were, it just never really explored. Looking at the orange-haired guy, a little bit of Ueno, and I guess a couple of the side characters. I guess like someone like what's his name? Nada Tagashi,
The
Nada.
Afro guy.
Yeah, Nagatsuka. Like he was fine. Like he was a side character, but you know that's an example of a side character I think fulfilled their role. But somebody like Mashiba, I don't think really had a point. But we've already talked about that. I think the most important thing about this movie is really the message and you know how important it is to be considerate of others, I guess, and try to understand someone's situation and the difficulties that come with that. And you know, you do that through communication. And in this movie, the very literal barrier to communication is someone is deaf, and there are consequences to being deaf. And sometimes people internalize those consequences. Sometimes people project those consequences onto other people. And I think that, you know, there's just different ways of handling mistakes or the past. And I think that's what I like about this movie is the variety in characters and how they all have a very sensible approach in respect to their character design of how they dealt with, you know, this troublesome past that they've all had together, the shared experience. And, you know, just how delicately they were able to you know, have these characters deal with that communication failure seems very real. I really think that the characters kind of came to life in this movie. But I don't know, I kind of really like it when a movie has completed parts and a movie really doesn't have any gaps. And I feel like those characters and some of those, I mean, it's just wasted screen time for me. So I probably have to give this like an 8.5, maybe an 8. I probably have to watch this again. And same with Will. If I read the manga, it'd probably like shoot up, maybe even to a 10. But you know, if I'm not getting the full story, I don't know. It feels like a little incomplete to me. Just because there were just some introductions that were left unfulfilled. But you know, like the art and the soundtrack and the animation was like just all like really good. So if I read the manga and then having seen the movie, I think like the entire story as a whole, like I'd probably give it a 10. But from what I've seen just with the movie, I'd probably give the movie alone an 8.5.
Yeah, I think I'll adjust my score. I'll probably set it down to a 9.5 or maybe like a 9.75. But I don't know. I think it's a bit disingenuous for me to say I had some drawbacks and it might be fixed in the manga, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And I'm gonna judge the movie just on the movie. So those drawbacks they did stick out to me when I was watching it. So I can't give it a perfect score, but it is a movie I would watch again in a heartbeat. So I would say 9.5.
Nice. All right. And if that's it, then our analysis of A Silent Voice is all finished up. So we're signing off.
Peace.
Later.
Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and now Spotify. Just look up Anime Soirée. We're there.
You'll find
Hell
us.
yeah.